Welcome to the session on mind and matter based on Abhidhamma. In this session, we shall explore what is the Abhidhamma, the four subjects of the Abhidhamma, and the concept of mind and mental factors. Before we begin this session, I would think there is something that needs mentioning. Of course, it is good to know the theoretical aspects of Buddha's teachings, and perhaps it is more important to practice Buddha's teachings more than knowing theory. So knowing to some extent, having some theoretical aspect would be sufficient, but having more practical element will lead to fruition or becoming a stream enterer. So of course, we shall be having different sessions, mainly focusing on stream entry and discussing from practical aspect. Having said that, the purpose of this presentation is to generally outline the theoretical aspect of Buddha's teachings from Abhidhamma's point of view. So what is the Abhidhamma? The four subjects of the Abhidhamma and the concept of mind and mental factors we shall explore during this session. If we were to think of mind and mental factors, this particular phrase is quite useful that can be found in Dhammapada. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind, a person speaks or acts, suffering follow him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. And the opposite can be true. That means with a pure mind, if a person speaks or acts, one can expect happiness to flourish. To understand Buddha's teachings, it is beneficial to have some kind of a historical overview. This is mainly so because Buddha's teachings originated about 2,600 years ago. Since then, there has been various additions included into the teachings of Buddha over a long period of time. Therefore, being open-minded and reflecting how and where to find Buddha's teachings, the true message of Buddha, can help one to understand the true teachings of Buddha, to gain the right view and to become a Sotapanna or stream enterer. So to look a bit more further into historical overview, the first Buddhist council took place at Rajagaha in India after about 3 months from the time of Buddha's Parinibbana. And there seemed to be no conflict about what the Buddha thought occurred during this period. And thereafter, there seems to be various kind of slowly over a period of time, divisions and schools emerge, and that it was difficult for people to enter into one conclusion or to understand the Buddha's teachings. And so we can see there happened to be lots of schism of Sangha over a period of time. And the second Buddhist council, which took place 100 years later, and it took place due to the first schism of Sangha. The third Buddhist council, which took place in Pataliputta or Patna in India, was about 200 years later by Emperor Ashoka on the request of Venerable Moggaliputta Tissa. And during that time is what we see that there was the first split took place between the Stavri Vada and Mahasangika. And thereafter, the fourth Buddhist council was held in Sri Lanka under the patronage of King Vattagamani Abbe, and Buddha's teachings were originally preserved orally. For the first time in history, we see that it was written down in Sri Lanka during the fourth Buddhist council. And so these kind of historical additions or developments preserved the Buddha's teachings to what it is available for us today. Talking a bit about historical views, so there has been various schools and divisions of Buddha's teachings that has been progressing over a period of time. So there is one kind of traditions, and there are also different kinds of schools, such as Tantric Buddhism, which is a kind of a Mahayana Buddhism. The origins of Tantric Buddhism can be traced to ancient Hindu and Vedic practices as well, including esoteric ritual texts designed to achieve physical, mental, and spiritual breakthroughs. Then there is the famous Tibetan Buddhism, which evolved from the 7th century CE in Tibet. It is based mainly on the rigorous intellectual disciplines of Madhyamika and Yogacara philosophy, and utilizes the tantric ritual practices that developed in Central Asia and particularly in Tibet. And of course, the additions of Buddha's teachings has been growing over a long period of time. So far, we have been exploring the kind of historical additions. Apart from what we have spoken so far, the schools such as Theravada, Mahayana, in addition to that, within Theravada itself, there has been various additions, such as in the contemporary context, in recent developments, we can say kind of like Vipassana movement, and also the kind of schools such as Theravada, forest tradition, Thai forest tradition, and so on. Different kind of schools and additions have been developing over a period of time. So among these schools and various traditions and various kind of teachings, the key is to find Buddha's true teachings, or Sri Mentora, in other words, the person who has gained the right understanding of Buddha's teachings will look beyond all these traditions and schools which are created by disciples who are not the Buddha himself. We look beyond all these traditions, rites and rituals and schools and divisions to identify the original message of Buddha. So it can be a bit tricky because there are very many schools, very many traditions. And so we have come a long way from the time of Buddha to find the exact message. However, for one who finds such a message, gaining realization becomes very practical. And so it is beneficial, although it is up to each individual how one wants to practice it, one wants to do, and so on. Understanding historical clues or historical overview can provide some clues as to where to find Buddha's original teachings to become a Sri Mentora. Having briefly looked at the kind of developments or additions that has been taken place to Buddha's teachings, let us focus on Abhidhamma's approach. So Abhidhamma's approach is such that it uses Dhamma theory. According to modern scholars, Abhidhamma began to be composed during the 3rd century BCE. Therefore, Abhidhamma cannot be the direct work of the Buddha himself, but of later disciples and scholars. Abhidhamma studies the no-self using Dhamma theory. In doing so, Abhidhamma adopts a Dharma theory approach in understanding the mind and matters by treating that only Dhammas exist in an ultimate sense. Dhammas here refers to various conceptual groupings of physical and mental process. Noah Ronkin defines Dhammas as the constituents of sentient experience, the irreducible building blocks that make up one's world, albeit they are not static mental continents and certainly not substances. According to Professor Karunadasa, a Dhamma, which can be translated as a principle or element, is those items that result when the process of analysis is taken to its ultimate limits. However, this does not mean that they have an independent existence, for it is only for the purposes of description that they are postulated. They are also said to be not-self and thus empty. In Abhidhamma, we can see that dhammas are classified into 4 ways. Chitta, which means mind, consciousness, and awareness. Cetasika, mental factors, mental events, associated mentality. There are 52 types. Rupa, physical occurrences, material form, 28 types. And the other kind of classification is Nibbana, extinction or cessation, the only unconditioned Dhamma. According to Abhidhamma's approach, it neither arises nor ceases due to casual interaction. According to Abhidhamma, the consciousness can be understood in the context of dependent origination. Accordingly, all dhammas arise in dependence upon other dharmas. Accordingly, it has been suggested that consciousness is not static, but rather a constantly changing process that depends on conditions of duality. What is that duality? It is, in the case of eye consciousness, for example, either visual organ, which is impermanent, changing and becoming other, and visible objects, which are impermanent, changing and becoming other. Such is the transient, fugitive duality of eye and visible objects, which is impermanent, changing and becoming other. Eye consciousness too is impermanent, for how could eye consciousness arisen by depending on impermanent conditions be permanent? Consciousness does not exist as an isolated phenomenon. It always exists in immediate conjunction with the other 4 aggregates into which the living being is analyzed, namely the corporeal feelings, perceptions, and volitional formations. Hence the Buddha declares, because though someone might say, apart from corporeality, apart from feelings, apart from perceptions, apart from volitional formations, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion. That is impossible. The reciprocal dependence of consciousness, on the one hand, and mentality, materiality, on the other. Here, mentality denotes 5 mental factors, namely feeling, perception, volition, sensory contact, and attention. The idea behind this situation is that as knowing or awareness of an object, consciousness cannot arise as a solitary phenomenon. It must be simultaneously accompanied at least by 5 mental factors that perform more specialized tasks in the act of cognition. Materiality in the compound, mentality, materiality denotes the organic matter that enters into the composition of a living being. As for example, the physical sense organs. The basic principles are, there is no thing in itself or an entity having its own nature. Beneath or behind the mental phenomena into which the mental continuum is analyzed. It is better to take as self this physical body rather than the mind, for what is called mind arises as one thing and ceases as another by day and by night. There are 7 mental concomitants or cetasika that are common to every consciousness. They are contact, sensation, perception, volition, one-pointedness of mind, faculty of life, and attention. They are invariably present in all types of consciousness. They bear, so to speak, equal responsibility for the arising of any consciousness. Hence, they are called universals. The 7 universal mental factors are contact, feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, attention. The 6 occasional mental factors are ethically variable mental factors found only in certain consciousness. They are application of thought, examining, decision, energy, rapture, desire. The unwholesome mental factors accompany the unwholesome consciousness. 4 universal unwholesome mental factors are delusion, lack of shame, disregard for consequences, restlessness. Why Chetana is called karma, we can question. The Chetana or the intention is what that generates karma. And the kind of karma we can see in different ways based on its function. It can be classified as reproductive karma, supportive karma, obstructive karma, or destructive karma. Reproductive karma, the kind of karma that supports someone to be reborn. And the kind of supportive karma, the kind of karma that helps a being to perform certain things or which are supportive in doing certain things. On the other hand, obstructive karma, the kind of karma that acts as an obstruction for being. Destructive karma are the kind of karma that are destructive or destructs. Karma can also be classified based on priority of effect. Vedic karma are kind of the key or the main karmas that are, of course, having the biggest effect on one's life, that one has collected during one's lifetime. And proximate karma or death proximal karma is the kind of karma that generates in one's mind at the time or coming close to one's death. And habitual karma is a kind of karma that one generates as a habit over a longer period of time, whereas reserve or cumulative karma is the kind of karma that are reserved or collected or stored. And then again, the kind of karma can be classified according to time in which effects are worked out. So certain karmas can produce immediate result, which we call as immediately effective karma. And they can have subsequent effect, subsequently effective karma, we call it. And they may have indefinite effect, which is to be called as indefinitely effective karma. And then ineffective karmas will have no effect at all. So this is actually an overview of this session. Having said that, once again, please to remind again. If somebody is interested in gaining the kind of, or gaining realization, of course, the 4 stages of enlightenment, practicing teachings of Buddha is the key. That means to become a good person in day-to-day life, paying homage to Buddha in one's thoughts as much as possible, and reflecting on the kind of duality and so on in day-to-day life will help one to gain realization. And this short session is simply to provide a brief overview of mind and mental factors. And so practice and reflecting on Dhamma is what helps one to gain realization. Having said that, thank you very much for listening to this session.